Two people, same job, same salary. After 40 years, one of them retires with $2.3 million. The other retires with $47,000. Same income, same opportunities, same 40 years. The only difference between them, the only variable that explains the entire gap, is a question they asked about every dollar they ever touched. One of them asked, "What can I buy with this?" The other asked, "What can this build?" Warren Buffett has been asking the second question since he was 11 years old. He has never stopped. And the compounding of that one question across 80 years of financial decisions produced one of the greatest fortunes in human history. But here is what makes this uncomfortable. You already know which question you have been asking. You have known for a while. And if you are honest with yourself right now in this moment, you know exactly which one of those two people you have been. The $2.3 million person or the $47,000 person. The owner or the consumer. This video is about crossing from one side to the other. Not tomorrow, starting with the next dollar you touch. To understand the consumer mindset, you do not have to look far. You are surrounded by it. You were raised in it. It was the water you swam in from the moment you were old enough to want something. The consumer mindset is not stupidity. It is not laziness. It is not a character flaw. It is a precisely engineered orientation, constructed by decades of advertising, cultural messaging, and economic incentive design that directs human attention toward one question above all others. What can I buy with this money? The consumer sees money as something to be converted, earned then converted, into things, into experiences, into the visible markers of a life that is going well. The car in the driveway, the house in the right neighborhood, the phone that came out 6 months ago, the vacation that generates the photographs, the restaurant that signals you have arrived. None of these things are inherently bad. But the orientation, the default conversion of money into consumption, has a mathematical consequence that most people never fully reckon with. Every dollar converted into consumption is gone. Not just spent, gone. It produces a moment of satisfaction, a depreciating asset, a memory. It does not produce more dollars. It does not recruit more soldiers into the army. It does not build anything that will still be generating value in 10 years. The consumer is always one paycheck ahead of zero, sometimes less, because the consumption expands to fill the income, and the income can always stop. And when the income stops, the consumption that was supposed to make life feel good suddenly becomes the pressure that makes life feel impossible. Warren Buffett has said, more than once, that the consumer mindset is the most expensive orientation a person can carry through their financial life. Not because buying things is wrong, because the habit of seeing money primarily as something to be converted into consumption is a habit that, sustained across decades, is almost mathematically guaranteed to produce financial dependence. The owner mindset begins with a different question. Not what can I buy with this money, but what can this money build? This is not a subtle distinction. It produces entirely different behavior at every decision point. The consumer who receives a $1,000 windfall thinks, what can I get? The owner who receives the same $1,000 thinks, what does this recruit? Every dollar in the owner's mental accounting is a potential soldier, a unit of capital that can be deployed to capture more capital, which captures more capital, which compounds across time into something that the original $1,000 bears almost no resemblance to. Buffett has described this mental model in various ways over the decades, but the core is always the same. He sees money not as a means of consumption, but as a means of ownership. Every dollar not spent on consumption is a dollar that can be deployed into something that produces more dollars. The goal is never to have a great lifestyle. The goal is to own things that fund a great lifestyle without requiring your continued labor. This distinction between funding a lifestyle through labor and funding it through ownership is the fundamental economic divide of modern life. On one side are the people who will work until they cannot. On the other side are the people who own things that work for them. And the divide between those two groups is not primarily a function of income. It is primarily a function of mindset. There are people earning $200,000 a year who will retire with almost nothing, because every dollar they earned was converted immediately into consumption. And the consumption expanded with the income, And by the time the income stops, there is no ownership, no compounding, no army of dollars doing the work they are no longer able to do. And there are people who earn $40,000 a year who retire with genuine financial independence because a portion of every dollar they earned was deployed rather than consumed, and that portion compounded across decades into something that consumption could never have produced. The income is not the variable. The mindset is the variable. Warren Buffett was 11 years old when he bought his first shares of stock. Most people know the story at the surface level. A precocious child, his first trade, a future billionaire taking his first step. But what actually happened that day, and in the months that followed, reveals something about the owner mindset that no amount of abstract explanation can fully capture. He bought 3 shares of Citi Service Preferred at $38 each. He had been saving and accumulating for years by this point, newspaper routes, selling gum door to door, retrieving golf balls from water hazards and reselling them. Every dollar earned had been deployed, not consumed. And now, finally, he had enough to make his first real ownership stake. The price dropped almost immediately, down to $27, more than 20% below what he had paid. Stop and feel what that means for an 11-year-old. He had worked for years to accumulate that capital. He had saved when other kids were spending. He had chosen ownership over consumption at every possible turn, and now the number said he had lost a significant portion of it. The pressure to sell, to stop the bleeding, to get out, to convert the remaining ownership back into cash before it fell further, was real. He felt it. He has talked about feeling it. He held. The price recovered. It went above $40. And he sold, locking in a small gain, relieved to be out. Then he watched the stock go to $200. He has told this story not primarily as a regret about selling too soon, though he acknowledges the lesson about patience, but as an illustration of the exact moment when the gap between the consumer and the owner becomes viscerally, physically real. The consumer, under pressure, converts ownership back into the safety of cash. The owner, under the same pressure, asks a different question: has the business changed? If the answer is no, if the underlying value is intact, the price movement is information about the market's mood, not about what you own. At 11 years old, Buffett was already asking the owner's question. Not perfectly, not yet, but the instinct was there, and every subsequent decision refined and deepened it until it became the most reliable filter he has ever possessed. The consumer mindset and the owner mindset produce different relationships with almost every financial instrument that exists. Take debt. The consumer sees debt as a tool for accelerating consumption. A credit card allows you to buy now what you cannot yet afford. A car loan allows you to drive something more impressive than your savings permit. A mortgage allows you to live somewhere that your income alone would not provide access to. In each case, debt is being used to consume beyond current means. And the cost of that debt, the interest, the fees, the compounding of the obligation, is a direct transfer of future wealth to the institution that extended the credit. The owner sees debt differently. Debt is a tool for leveraging ownership. Borrowed capital deployed into assets that generate returns exceeding the cost of the borrowing accelerates the accumulation of wealth rather than the accumulation of obligations. The question is never, should I borrow? The question is whether what I am borrowing to own will produce more than the cost of the borrowing. Now take the way the two mindsets experience the same ordinary event. You walk into a coffee shop. You order a drink. You pay $5. The consumer experiences this as consumption, a small pleasure, an affordable luxury. The owner experiences it differently. Not with guilt. Buffett himself is famously content to spend money on things he genuinely enjoys, and he does not advocate joyless frugality. But the owner, in the back of their mind, is also running a different calculation. Who built this? Who owns this? How does this business convert $5 transactions into a compounding revenue stream? Is this the kind of economics I want to be on the other side of? Buffett did not become one of the wealthiest people in history by denying himself. He became one of the wealthiest people in history by consistently deploying capital into the side of the transaction that builds rather than the side that consumes. He bought Coca-Cola. He did not just drink it. He owns See's Candies. He does not just eat candy. He is a major shareholder in American Express. He does not just use credit cards. Every business he consumes from, he has thought about owning. Not all made sense to own, but the habit of seeing every consumption transaction as a potential ownership transaction, of standing mentally on both sides of every exchange, is the orientation that produced the portfolio. Here is the part of this video that most people will find hardest to hear. The reason you have been thinking like a consumer is not your fault. You were taught to systematically, from the earliest age at which advertising could reach you. Every commercial you ever watched was designed to make you better at being a consumer. Every cultural message about what success looks like, the car, the house, the phone, the vacation, was produced by owners who needed consumers to buy what they were selling. The entire machinery of modern consumer capitalism is built on the premise that you will see money primarily as something to spend. And it works on almost everyone. It is working right now on the vast majority of the people you know. Not because they are weak or unintelligent, because the system that installed the consumer mindset is extraordinarily well designed and has been running for a very long time. The owner mindset was never installed. It was never taught in school. It was never in the advertisements. It was never in the cultural messaging about what a successful life looks like. It has to be chosen, deliberately, against the grain of everything you were raised to believe. Buffett chose it at 11. Most people never choose it at all. You are choosing it right now by still being here. So how do you make the shift? Not in theory, in practice. Starting this week, the first step is to change what you notice. When you walk through your day, when you buy something, use something, pay for something, practice seeing the other side of the transaction. Who built this? Who owns this? How does this business generate its revenue? Is this the kind of business I would want to own a piece of? This does not require action. It requires attention. The habit of seeing ownership potential in every transaction, sustained over time, quietly reshapes how capital allocation feels. Start small. Next time you hand money to any business, ask who is getting richer from this transaction. And could that person be me? The second step is to make one owner decision before every consumer decision. Before you spend, ask, is there something I could own with this money that would generate more of it? Not every time will the answer be yes. Sometimes the consumption is genuinely the right choice. The experience is worth more than the compounding. The need is real, the pleasure is valuable. But the act of asking, of making the owner question automatic before every financial decision, changes the ratio of consumption to deployment across hundreds of small choices over months and years. The third step is to begin owning something. Anything, today. A share of an index fund, a stake in a business, something that generates value independent of your presence. The psychological shift that comes from owning something that works while you sleep is not purely intellectual. It is experiential. And the experience of ownership, once felt, changes how every subsequent financial decision looks. Buffett's specific instruction to anyone starting from zero: open a brokerage account this week. Buy one share of one index fund. It does not matter how small. What matters is the shift from the person who only consumes to the person who owns. That shift, made concrete and real, is the beginning of everything. The fourth step is to audit your spending through the owner lens. Take the last 30 days of your financial life. Every purchase, every subscription, every recurring payment. For each one, ask two questions. First, is this consumption or ownership? Second, if it is consumption, is it worth what I am paying? Not in dollars, but in the compounding I am giving up. Most people, when they do this audit honestly, find 3 to 5 categories of spending they have never consciously examined. Subscriptions barely used. Habits automated. Lifestyle inflations that happen so gradually they were never actually decided. These are not moral failures. They are attention failures. The audit turns autopilot into awareness. The fifth step is to widen the gap and protect it like it is the most valuable thing you own. Because it is. The gap between what you earn and what your lifestyle costs is the engine of ownership. Everything you deploy into assets comes from that gap. And every time your income increases, you will feel the cultural pressure to narrow the gap by upgrading the lifestyle. A better car, a bigger house, a more expensive version of what you already have. Buffett has resisted this pressure for 80 years, not because he is indifferent to comfort, because he understood, at a level most people never reach, that the lifestyle upgrade is a consumption decision that permanently reduces the ownership potential of every future dollar. His specific instruction: every time your income increases, deploy the entire increase before you spend any of it. Automate the investment before the lifestyle expands to fill it. This single habit, practiced consistently for years, changes the trajectory of a financial life more dramatically than any investment strategy ever could. The sixth step is to find one business you understand and begin studying it like an owner. Not to buy it immediately, not to trade it, to understand it. How does it make money? What protects it from competition? What would have to change for it to stop being valuable? Buffett reads 500 pages a day not to find tips but to build understanding. And the deep understanding of even one business changes how you see every other business. It trains the owner's eye. It develops the ability to distinguish between what the market is paying for something and what it is actually worth. That distinction, repeated across a career of careful observation, is where the most durable returns in investing come from. The seventh step is to redefine what success feels like in your financial life. Stop measuring it by what you have bought. Start measuring it by what you have built. Not the car, not the house, not the vacation or the restaurant or the lifestyle visible to everyone around you. The actual difference between what you own and what you owe. The net worth that grows whether you are watching it or not. The army of dollars deployed and compounding quietly in the background of a life that does not need to be spectacular on the outside to be extraordinary on the inside. The consumer's financial life is always at risk. It depends on the income continuing, the job remaining, the body staying healthy, the economy cooperating. Remove any one of those dependencies and the lifestyle, which was never really owned, only rented with monthly payments, begins to collapse. The owner's financial life is not at risk in the same way. The ownership continues whether the income does or not. The businesses run whether the owner shows up or not. The compounding continues whether the market is cooperating or not. That is not a feeling. That is a mathematical condition. And it is available to anyone willing to make the shift. Warren Buffett is 94 years old. He still drives himself to the same office. He still eats breakfast at McDonald's. He still lives in the house he bought in 1958. He does not live this way because he cannot afford otherwise. He lives this way because the orientation that produced his wealth has never left. It is not a discipline he maintains. It is who he became, the person who sees every dollar as a potential soldier, every transaction as a potential ownership opportunity, every financial decision as a choice between building and consuming. That person, sustained across 8 decades, produced one of the greatest accumulations of private wealth in human history. Not because of genius, not because of luck, not because of access to information others did not have, because of a question, one question, about every dollar he ever touched. The two people in the coffee shop this morning handed over the same $5. One of them was thinking about the coffee. The other was thinking about who owned the coffee shop. You know which one Warren Buffett was. The only question left is which one you are going to be. Not what can I buy with this? What can this build? Stop thinking like a consumer. The financial life you are capable of building is waiting on the other side of that decision.